Hi there and welcome to the 24th episode of Career Stories Live. So today I'm joined by Rebecca Stobbs, who's the Alumni Relations Manager at the Newcastle University Business School. So welcome, Rebecca. Thank you for joining.
Hello, nice to see everybody. Nice to see you again, Sarah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So as always, anyone that's watching either now or later, please do comment to let us know that you're here, where you're joining from. Feel free to ask any questions, etc. as we go through. And if you're watching on replay, leave some comments and I'll come back and answer those later. So for anyone that hasn't watched before, the basis for these lives really is I've always just been interested in what people do and why they do it. I'm a career coach. I'm really interested in learning a bit about what people do and why they do them. So the aim really is to give people who are watching ideas and advice on places to source information. So we will make a start. So Rebecca, could you just give us a brief intro into you and what it is you do?
Yeah, not a problem, Sarah. So my name is Rebecca, and as Sarah said at the beginning, I'm the Alumni Relations Manager at Newcastle University. So for anybody that doesn't know what the alumni term is, it's just a fancy word I always say for graduates. And what that basically means is on a day-to-day basis, I create content that supports our graduates with their career development. So that's how I met Sarah. I asked Sarah to come along and do a little bit of a LinkedIn tutorial for some of our graduates based in London. We get them connected as well. We do a lot of networking in branches and also share back the university's research and kind of look about how that might support them. It's a little bit twofold because part of my role is also getting alumni to come in again and talk about their experience. So it enhances the student experience, but also helps prospective students think about how they might like to come to university. So we have alumni that come in, for example, speak at induction panels. So no day is the same. I just came back from China. I was just telling Sarah beforehand because we have a lot of alumni there. But before this role, I was in the university for 3 years previously as the International Alumni Officer. So at the university, I've always been involved in graduate experience and the alumni experience. But before that, I was in a completely different sector. I was in the third sector and where I worked in fundraising. So I was in there for about 5 to 6 years. It's something that I started straight after graduation, and we did kind of everything from event fundraising to corporate fundraising, administration, and I had a great time there. Just moved in 2018, I think, over into the higher education. So
Brilliant.
That's me in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So I've got Alison joining from Milton Keynes. So thank you for joining, Alison. Nice to see you. It's really interesting. I think the alumni is so powerful, isn't it? Just trying to get people back in and talk to people about why they want to come to that school or what they've done afterwards, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. The reason I always buy alumni coming back in to speak as well is because I always say it's a little bit like when your mum and dad tell you to do something and you never listen as a teenager, but if your friends told you, you would always listen. And I kind of say it's when the teachers or myself are telling our students to do something, it's just like, oh, but when we get somebody in who's got a similar story to somebody sitting in the audience, it just resonates so much better. It's an authentic story, and it's one of the areas love to do. So actually now we've got a couple of alumni speaking at a panel, which my colleagues are running as I'm here. But it's always great to see.
Brilliant. That's really good. So to go into early careers, so did you have a job whilst you were at school? I've been finding this question really interesting with people, and if you did, what was it and how has it helped you?
Yeah, so I had a job while I was at school and I had a job while I was at university. So while I was at school, when I turned 16, my mum was like, come on, let's get some experience and also get some kind of cash in my back pocket, so to speak. So I worked in retail from I was about 16 to 18, just part-time, kind of after school and on a weekend. And then while I was at university, once again, kind of realised that student loans only take you so far, and I needed a little bit of cash. So for then, I worked in hospitality during my second year and then decided to focus on my studies for the third year. So as you can probably tell, I love talking to people, and I think kind of both retail and hospitality, the customer facing, I had to talk to people on the shop floor, in the restaurant, and that kind of realised that I was quite good at it. There was stuff in hospitality that I was appalling at. For example, I wasn't allowed to carry the plates out of the kitchen because I'm clumsy and, I dropped them. But I was really good at talking to people. So I was the hostess for the evening and I would have to answer the phones, take people to the seat and that sort of thing. So I think for me, it kind of really developed those skills and made me not afraid to talk to a lot of different people. And I
Yeah.
don't think I necessarily would have got that if I hadn't have had those roles. And then just the standard ones that, you know, I was needed to be held accountable. I had to be at work at a certain time at 16 years old.
Yeah.
No, that's not always easy to do. You know, when you're 16, your friends are going out, or you're at uni and your friends want to go out on a night out. So there was that level of accountability that I've had to have from a young age, and time management that comes from that. It also made me work out there's probably stuff that, you know, I didn't want to do longer term, probably develop that. Yes, I love talking to people, but did I want to work in the retail industry for the rest of my life? The answer was probably no. So it just helps kind of made me think where I wanted to go after university.
Yeah, that makes sense. That you learn as much about what you don't want to do as what you do, don't you, in those things?
No. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned the third sector was your first role. So how did you start that? How did you decide on the third sector? Was it a kind of an accident or?
Yeah, I would say a lot of my career route is not being maybe a traditional route. I studied theology and religious studies while at university. So unless you're going to be an RE teacher, which, you know, when I started at 18 years old, it was something that I did want to do, and then quickly worked out probably no. There wasn't an obvious career path for me to do. I applied for some graduate schemes in my third year, but I wasn't successful in getting to the final stages. I got through a couple of rounds, and then it got to about the May time, and I'm probably in the majority of undergraduates where we're thinking, what do we want to do now? What's my life going to look at? And again, I kind of just started to think about the stuff that I enjoyed. And again, was talking to people. I enjoyed volunteering. I'm quite a emotional person as well. I like to make those connections, and somehow I stumbled across a unpaid internship with a charity called Bernardo's. My now husband lives in Wales at the time, and that was where the opportunity was based. So it kind of just lined up, and I applied for the internship. It was unpaid, and then I went along, and I didn't get the internship that I interviewed for, but they said, hey, look, you really a people person, you've got some events experience through volunteering as well during university. Why don't you do the events and fundraising internship, which is kind of how I've got into the third sector.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was it was only a short time. It was 3 months, but it was probably one of the most formative periods of my life. It was the first time I got to kind of work in an office experience. I had a very supportive manager, and she let me stay on for a little while because after that 3 months, I hadn't managed to secure paid employment. So once again, after that, I thought, okay, where do we go from here? We can go into the fundraising industry, or I can go into the events industry. And to be quite honest, Sarah, I was willing to work in Wales or move back up to Newcastle, which, if you can tell from my accent, I'm from the northeast. So I was applying for jobs in quite a few different places. So I would just say for anybody listening, just apply for all the jobs that you think you would be suitable for, or you think you would enjoy. The more the merrier, because, you know, there's a lot of other people also kind of maybe looking for jobs as well. So just put your hat in the ring, so to speak. So that's what I did. Made a LinkedIn profile. So again, you've got LinkedIn, but use that as well to your advantage. And I ended up kind of putting my hat on LinkedIn, being like, I'm interested in fundraising, I'm interested in events. And a recruiter found me and said, we've got a interview for a charity in Newcastle. Could you come? It's in a few days' time. I was in Wales at the time. I was like, yes, no problem. I'll just go stay with my mum for a little while. And from that kind of led again to a 4-month contract at a charity, paid employment. And it was interesting. I learned quite a lot there. Some things that I didn't always enjoy as well. And I think that just then helps again form the next stage. And then I fell into my next role after that. It was at a music venue, which is also a charity in the northeast. And worked my way up the ladder, so to speak. And that was another one where I interviewed for a job, didn't get that job, and they said, hey, why don't you apply for this job? And it's always kind of worked that way as well. So I think it's just about building those networks and kind of finding out kind of who you can talk to that can give you the foot in the door.
It's really good. It's always so good to hear people talking about volunteering leading into a paid role, because I think when I talk to clients about it quite often, I think they think I'm almost making it up, that it doesn't happen like that. But it just seems to be more and more often that is happening now, that you kind of take on a volunteering role and then something comes from it. So definitely really good to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that volunteering role, they paid expenses, so you weren't out of pocket, so to speak. So if you've got some sort of funds behind you or a supportive family, and I know that's not always easy and that's not always the case, but if that's an option that you could explore, it's something that I would recommend. And I had a great time, and my boss I still talk to her to this day. Sarah and I both run, for anybody listening, and kind of she does a Run for Wales for events manager there, and she said, I've got a place for the Cardiff half marathon last year, can you come down and do it? I've got a spare place. I was like, yeah, okay.
Excellent.
It was just that kind of relationship going. It's kind of really nice to see, and kind of just see her career progression as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know where it's going to lead, do you? So Alison's just saying then always a good strategy to do something you enjoy or give you energy and motivate you. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. And also good to hear about the you didn't get the job that you went for, but they found something else for you. And again talking to clients about that, because it even doesn't happen straight away. You never know, they may well remember you and call you back for something else. So
yeah, I think, you know what, it's probably happened more times for me entering a company than it has not. I was just thinking that when you were talking, Sarah. So it happened at the music venue, and then it's happened at Newcastle University as well. When I started as the international officer, I actually applied for another job in that team and wasn't successful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so maybe it's just me. Maybe I always apply for a slightly different job, and I'm a better fit for someone else. You get to meet the people, you get to get a feel of who your work colleagues and bosses are, and actually that also helps them realize what fit you can be. So yeah, just
definitely. Yeah, no, that's really good. And that kind of leads into my next question, which was then, how did you make the switch from the not-for-profit or third sector into education?
Yeah, so coming up to the end of kind of being in fundraising in the third sector, I was kind of thinking maybe I would like a little bit of a change. And it was quite a turbulent time for the third sector, particularly the arts industry, with funding, because they rely quite heavily on government and Arts Council funding. So it just so happened that unfortunately I went through a redundancy period, but it probably came at the right time, do I say, looking back now. And I realised that I was probably done with fundraising at that point. Having that monetary target, it's fine and it makes some people thrive, but I don't think it was making me thrive as much as it could do. So I did some reflection, went back to the kind of the drawing board of what could I do, what can I do with my skills, and realize what I enjoy, what I'm good at. And one of the things that I am good at is I'm a chatterbox, and I can talk to people. I can build relationships with people from kind of across the globe now, but then it was kind of across corporates, and also being kind of very national facing. And that's kind of what I realized I probably wanted to do, a job where you get to communicate with different people on a daily basis. One of the areas of the roles in fundraising that I'd always enjoyed as well was putting on events where you get to see people thrive and be happy. And just started to apply for jobs that seemed to fit that area of what I would be interested in. And once again, I applied for jobs that kind of were across different sectors, across different organisations, and just so happened to get an interview at Newcastle University, not for the job, not for the international job. But yeah, I went along, had a great time. And you know what, because I was being made redundant, I had the time to dedicate to really prep for the role, prep for any kind of presentations that I had to do. I always seem to have to do a presentation in an interview. So I was very able to make sure I was very well prepared, had kind of my ducks in the row, and just kind of realised that I've got something to bring to the table as well, which made me a little bit more relaxed in that interview situation, maybe than normal. So that kind of helped in a way. So yeah, a switch out of force, but actually at the very right time, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I know we don't know each other really, really well, but I think that struck me when we first had a conversation, that you were really authentic with what you were talking about. And I know that word gets used so much at the moment, but I think when we had our first conversation, you were really transparent at the front, saying, I am speaking to other people, but I will get back to you by this time. And that's so unusual, I think. So I really appreciated it. I'm sure that comes across in interviews with you as well.
Yeah. And I just think, I mean, I was going to touch upon it later on, but just thinking about like tips and advice, because I know that interviews are nervous, and I obviously had the time to dedicate and really calm my nerves to that. But I went through a mentoring process myself a couple of years ago about how to get up on the next stage of my career. And my mentor made a very valid point of, yes, you're going in to be interviewed, but it's also your chance to work out if you would fit well within that organisation, and for you to kind of interview the panel as well and make sure that you're the right fit and that they're the right fit for you, because you've got so much to offer and bring to the table. If you're not going to feel comfortable in that situation, then don't put yourself in a position where you're going to kind of be struggling, if you're not happy. And I think that's always resonated well with me when going for interviews since is, yes, I'm nervous, of course I'm going to be, I'm applying for a new role and a new job, but actually, am I going to enjoy working with these people? What questions can I ask to kind of gauge that and gain that advice? And I've probably all had interviews where we're thinking, I don't think that's the right fit for me. And I can give an example of that. It was when I first graduated, so we're talking back in 2013, and again, thinking about applying for lots of different jobs of what I could do. And I went for an interview at a hospitality function organisation, that's the word. And it was a very odd experience. I didn't feel comfortable in that experience. It was a one-to-one interview in a very informal but yet weird session. There was a bit of a power dynamic, a gender split that just wasn't quite right. And I went out of that interview and said to my stepdad, bless him, who used to take me to every interview, I said, even if they offer me that job, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to go to the next stage. But don't worry, they're not going to ask me to come back for an interview or offer me the job, because he said I wouldn't fit well within their workspace. And lo and behold, the next couple of days they rang and said, can you come back for another interview? And I said, thank you for the opportunity, but no, thank you. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, thank you for the opportunity, but I don't think it's quite the right fit. And he hung up on me, and I was thinking, well,
no, really?
Yeah, but it actually made me learn like so much in that situation that I've got so much more to bring to the table. And just because you're offering me an interview doesn't mean that I have to go along to it. So yeah, please, people, like, don't feel that you owe anybody anything. Like, please be your authentic self and be true to yourself in that situation, because you know better than anybody else what you can bring.
Yeah, no, that's really true, isn't it? I had a client last week actually, and it was a second stage interview, and she said she wasn't sure that she would accept it even if she got offered it. So I said that's fine, and definitely don't accept something you're not happy with. But for her, I said, why don't you write down all your concerns, and then because she was like not sure. So I said, well, then go to the third interview if you get the third interview with all your questions, so that then you're making a better informed decision, aren't you? So I guess that's the thing, isn't it? But I think if you you've got a total reaction that this is not for me, then why waste your time continuing?
Yeah. And another thing I always say, so like when my husband's been thinking about maybe applying for a job, I've got friends and they're like, should I apply for it? And I always think, like, what have you got to lose? If you're matching most of the job spec and you think you'll enjoy it, apply for it. And then, if you get to the interview stage and you're still umming and ahhing, you don't have to go to the interview. Like, you can say thank you, but no thank you. And I just think, put your hat in the ring and see what happens. And it's worked out well for them.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So I think we've sort of covered a bit of this anyway, but I always end up talking about values. So do you think that your personal values have had an impact on the type of organisation or role that you have taken or will take?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if I'm in the masses or not with this, but I'm in a fortunate position where, I don't have to go for the highest ranked or highest paid job. And that's something I'd rather do, a job that brings me joy than maybe one that is going to give me millions and millions of pounds. And that's never kind of made me think, I need to go for that role because it's going to give me, 20, 30, 40, 100 grand more than it is. So I always focus on knowing that a job's going to give me kind of the satisfaction of being mentally stimulated and also being able to enjoy the things that I like to do, which is talking to people and going through kind of a little bit of a difficult time in fundraising with my own kind of mental well-being, kind of wanting to put that at the front of any kind of job and making sure that that's kind of protected in a way. And I think quite fortunate in working in higher education that there are quite a few mechanisms put in place for colleagues' welfare and well-being. And, you know, you can see that once you join, but you can also see it through kind of the pages. If you were looking to apply for a job with a higher education setting, they're usually quite transparent about what the benefits are and what kind of options are open to people. So that's something that I always look at when thinking about what the next stage in my career would look like. But also for anybody that would be thinking about getting into any other role or higher education, just look at the pages and look at the wellbeing pages, particularly if that's something you're interested in, and maybe just see if that resonates well with you. So they're the kind of things that I always kind of look at, just protecting my own kind of health and wellbeing, and I'd advocate that for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I'm just going to move the order around of the questions I was going to ask, because this leads in nicely now. So in terms of advice, we're looking for people that want to work in the education sector. So do you want to just talk a little bit more about the kind of roles? Because I think probably people think teacher, lecturer, that kind of thing, but you know, the other roles that are available. So you want to talk about that?
You're 100% right. Actually, when I was traveling the other week, my other half got a comment from his work colleague being like, well, why are they in China? They're a teacher. And he was like, no, actually they're not. They work in professional services. So I think people don't understand that there is a whole professional service kind of backbone, a higher education. And some of the roles are probably quite bespoke to higher education, such as alumni recruitment, or you've got the career service, student recruitment. But you've also got the jobs that you'll see in most organisations. So the business school and the wider university's got multiple marketing teams. We got finance, HR, kind of all the standard things that are needed to make an organisation run. So I think if you are in HR, marketing, and you wanting to get into higher education, you know, look at the job alerts, kind of look on the websites. You can usually sign up to them. Networking, there are a lot of networking opportunities actually that universities put on, because often they have a business development team. So see if there's anything around there that individuals can get interested in, and then come along and join, and then just use, this is for everybody who's maybe thinking about getting into higher education, use LinkedIn, see who else is working in that industry and just connect with them and say, you know, I'm interested in making the move. How is it different from kind of the corporate world or the charitable world, whatever sector people are working in? Just ask for a 15, however long minute conversation just to gain that advice and gain that insight. And then for the kind of the more niche roles, actually, they might sound niche. Like I didn't know what the word alumni meant 5 years ago. I had to look it up.
When they offered you the job that you hadn't applied for.
So look at what transferable skills are, because if you imagine student recruitment, so you're getting students to join the university, it's quite salesy. So are you a sales manager or a sales executive and you wanting to make a change? Okay, well, is recruitment a thing for you? We've actually got a fundraising sector of Newcastle University, so you know you can make a direct move from fundraising in a third sector environment to fundraising in a higher education environment, if that would be something that you were open to. Or if you're like me, realise that you like to talk to people, you like to engage with people. Okay, well, that's what the engagement teams within universities do, and you can utilise that. And I just say kind of, talk to people, like use LinkedIn, start following people. And actually remember that if you are applying for a role and you've gone through university yourself, you've got that experience. So how can you touch upon that in an interview setting to think, oh yeah, I was really good at this role because I've had experience of that myself while I was at university, particularly for entry-level positions. If you're more kind of a recent graduate yourself, you're going to resonate a lot more with current student issues and problems than those that have graduated 10, 20, 30 years ago, and you can use that to your advantage in an interview setting as well.
Yeah. And I guess as well, if you're a student at the moment thinking about higher education, then going along to your alumni events is going to be great, because then you can talk about you've been to those events.
Yes, definitely. And also a big shout out to most of the careers teams at universities that are doing amazing work and I think are a bit of an untapped gem. So our universities for up to 3 years graduated, but different universities have different policies. And so just check out if you are at university or a recent graduate, look at what the provision is from your university, see what's available, because I sit opposite Kean and Joe and I hear what they say to some of the graduates and they are amazing. They do like interview chats, they'll check a CV, all free of charge, and kind of also online nowadays, kind of. So yeah, use every angle you've got available to you to kind of make a mark in the world and sector that you want to thrive in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned the interviews. So I think we've called them before informational interviews, where you talk to people and say, have you got 15 minutes to talk to me? And I think lots of people don't like the idea of that, but I guess what's the worst that can happen is someone says no or they ignore you, but you might get a really good contact out of it, mightn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I've always kind of advocated for myself, but also for other graduates that I've kind of been helping out and being able to make the connections alumni to alumni in my role. I often find that, yes, you get some people that don't respond, but the ones that they do are so passionate and so willing to kind of try and help you open every door available that, you know, yeah, you might get some knockbacks, but longer term, it makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the other underused thing on LinkedIn is the alumni page on LinkedIn, where you can then search for people that are doing the role that you want to do, that have been to your university. And I think that's just a great way of getting an intro to someone, isn't it? So, okay, you might have graduated 10 years ago, but, you know, would you mind having a chat to me about this?
Yeah, and you've got that instant connection. If nothing else, you can talk about what's changed at the uni in that time span, or what you enjoyed, to make that kind of icebreaker occur. But yeah, definitely utilise that. It's a great tool.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so what would you say have been your career highs so far, Rebecca?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because you asked me to think about some of the questions in advance. And I would say I've got like one major one. I would say I've probably got little smaller ones. So for me, I have spoke at conferences, which, you know, I do like to talk to people, but I do find public speaking quite intimidating, as I'm sure many of us do. And so kind of doing that was a big career high for me. I was quite nervous the day before, but, you know, I put my hat in the ring to do it again, so to speak. And then one of the things that I really enjoy is when a customer or a graduate or alumni kind of comes back and says how I've made a difference, or how the university or whatever kind of employer I've been working at has made a difference to them. And I actually got one that came through the other week, and it was such a lovely email about how I'd helped that person and made a difference. And it really just made me think what I'm doing here is right. It's kind of making an impact in the wider world, but also I can see them kind of how I am making a difference within the community, which was lovely to see, and something that I really enjoyed. And I'm a bit of a travel monster, so I have been in a quite fortunate position where I've managed to see a couple of different cities, a couple of different countries with my job, which I'm very fortunate about. And it's always nice to be able to kind of interact with people from across the globe. So that's something that I particularly enjoy. Just come together, really, yeah.
Yeah, talking to people mainly. That's good.
Put me in front of a mirror, I could talk to myself for days and days and days.
Thank you. And what, any career lows that you want to talk about? You don't have to. But...
Yeah, no, it's fine. Well, when I went through redundancy, it was a particularly kind of stressful time, as I'm sure it is for anybody who's gone through that. I haven't been through it since, so I don't know if I would be as stressed going through it this time, having been through the whole process and knowing that you can come out at the end of it. But yeah, I just remember at the time kind of laying in bed thinking, where can we go from here? What can we do? But you just put in a plan, you kind of put your thinking cap on it and go through it. And so yeah, I am glad that looking back, I'm glad that I've gone through it. I think it's made me a lot more resilient. It's made me also realise what I like in work and what I kind of want to take from that. So it might have happened for the best. And it hasn't happened at this organisation or kind of previous organisations for a while, but I did work in a place where it was quite cliquey and quite there was many cliques, and I wasn't fitting in well, which is fine, you know, not every personality suits kind of every situation, and it made the experience of that work not the best that it could have been. I felt quite alone, so it just also makes me think now when I'm going into a new role, kind of, okay, how am I going to fit within this organisation? Get a feel of it at the interview stage, like I said, but also then being mindful about when I start, who who can I kind of make my allies and make my friends and kind of have that person to talk to. And I think the business school in particular does some great things to try and help that. We do a buddy system when anybody starts. So I had a buddy when I started, so I felt very supported. And just we do like monthly kind of get-togethers where anybody can join if they would like to. And it's just mindful now, because I am a manager, if you get a new starter, kind of how you onboard them and make them feel welcomed, and just make sure that those clicks. So again, going through that has probably made me mindful of how not to do that. And my team in particular, I'm looking around because I'm in the office today, we're very friendly, I would like to think. Hopefully if anybody watches this back, they agree with me, but we're very friendly. We do that together and very supportive of one another. So I think kind of bad experiences sometimes make people very good at not doing the same again.
Exactly. So much to learn, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, running short of time. So one last quick question, which is what general advice would you give to graduates who are looking for their first role? So in anything, so just general stuff.
I think I've already touched upon most of it, because I would just say LinkedIn, use those networks, the alumni section, like you said, to kind of work out who's working in an industry or a role that you would like to aspire to be, and connect with them. You might not even want to meet them. You might just want to say, look, I'm aspiring to kind of what you are in 5-10 years time. Can I just follow your journey and that sort of thing? And realize what you enjoy and what you're good at, because once you work that out, I know it sounds cliche when people say, oh, it's not like you ever work a day in your life, because you obviously are working, but it just makes the time go so much more faster, and you feel like you've got a purpose and enjoying it. There's nothing worse than getting out of bed in the morning and thinking, oh, I've got to get up today. So just hone down on what you're going to enjoy. And that doesn't have to mean as well, that the job that you get when you graduate is going to be in the same industry, in the same sector in 10 years time. You can job move, you can move industries, you can start a new career. We're in that kind of world now where everybody's able to do that. So just go with how you feel at that time and kind of map out from there. And actually, I know it's short on time, but I had a boss at the music venue, and he said, when I was thinking about moving on or getting a new career route, and he said, Rebecca, why are you going for that job next? What's the job after that? Like, always think about the job after the job that you get. And I thought, it's quite good actually, because the job that I would have applied for, I couldn't see a progression route that way. And so he really helped. So I always think about that. Okay, well, what would the next job after that job be?
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. Yes, thank you. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much again for joining me today. It's been really interesting. I think there's loads of tips there for people both that are about to graduate and look for their first job, and for people that are looking to get into higher education, and just generally really good advice in terms of building those connections. So thank you so much. And as I mentioned, anyone that's got any more questions, please do put them on. Next Thursday, I'll be back at 1 o'clock again, and I'll be speaking to John Asperian, who is known as the relentlessly helpful LinkedIn nerd. So looking forward to hearing from him. We just had someone pop up, Michael, saying good morning from Dallas. So thank you very much for joining, Michael. Nice to see you. Brilliant. So thanks again, Rebecca, and I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.